Very
thank you.
happy to have you amidst us. ஒரு நல்ல ஊரு சார் உங்க ஊரு திருவாரூர்.
Okay, okay, ma'am.
வந்ததுல ரொம்ப சந்தோஷம்.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Arul Jyoti madam, have you checked with the audio and video of the guest speaker?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, Principal Madam, shall we start the session, ma'am?
Oh, sorry. Ma, you can start, ma. Mute பண்ணினால காது கேட்டிருக்காது.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Okay. No issues, ma'am. Sir?
Okay, ma'am. I will start.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Sudarshana madam. Sudarshana ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Let us begin the session with a formal introduction and welcoming.
Shall I start, ma'am?
Yes, ma. Yes, you please carry on.
Every moment is a fresh beginning. It's never too late to become whom you want to be. Good afternoon, one and all present here. Welcome back to the session 4 of the National Conference on Advanced Functional Materials and Engineering. Your little progress each day adds up to big results. May I now request Mrs. A. Neelaveni, Assistant Professor, Department of Physics, to welcome the gathering and introduce the speaker of the session. Neela ma'am, you're not audible, ma'am.
Now I am audible, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes, Neelaveni. Proceed.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I realize that you are fully dedicated to the past sessions that will follow, but I do hope you will also take time to enjoy the sessions, which is particularly designed to you to enhance the development of the potential candidates for energy storage applications. To boot this gathering, enable us to gain more information to building of energy storage systems. Hence, I delighted and honored to welcome the renowned personalities, our secretary and correspondent through P.N. Venkatachalam sir, CEO ma'am, and principal ma'am, and vice principal ma'am, and other college teaching faculties and students participants in different digital platforms. A warm welcome to our colleagues and our students also. I'm profusely overjoyed to take the opportunity to introduce our chief guest of the day, Dr. K. Chandrasekhar, UGC Assistant Professor, Department of Physics, Central University of Tamil Nadu, Tiruvarur, who is in the university since July 2015. This is the declaration which knows about the detailed academic profile of our chief guest. He holds a PhD degree in physics from Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, and he did his PG degree in the year of 2003 in Acharya Nagarjuna University, Guntur. He pursued BSc in 2001 from the same university. He did his postdoctoral work at Yonsei University, Seoul, Republic of Korea during the period 2009 to 2010. And he extended his postdoctoral work at University of Minha, Braga, Portugal during the period 2011 to 2015. He is author and co-author for around 60 articles in international journals and also served as referee for various journals in the field of material science and experimental condensed matter physics. He received various young faculty awards such as MHRD IIT Research Fellowship from Venus International Foundation and Senior Research Fellowship from CSIR. Moreover, he got a Brain Korean BK21 award and Portuguese Foundation of Science and Technology postdoctoral grants. He presented his work in various national and international conferences. He completed 4 research projects and having 2 ongoing DST-like sponsored projects. And also, he had organized various national and international conferences. About 17 postgraduate students and 4 PhD scholars are benefited under his research guidance. He is a well expert to analyze the material which underplaced in low temperature, the spin orientation yields different magnetic behavior and optical consistency. This analysis gave him a sound knowledge in the field of materials application such as photovoltaic cells. Similarly, his current research is about the material which in different size like nano yields the optimal behavior. Hence, this gives different applications such as energy storage. He much knew about the role of spin for the process to regenerate the electrical properties and magnetic properties as well. In this session, besides of exchange of scientific knowledge, the important part of the seminar will be discussions about future capacitive perspectives. Special request to the audience, kindly fill your feedback form, which will share in the chat box at the end of the session, and it will alive only 15 minutes after the session. Kindly fill the form as possible as. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you, madam, for the welcome address and brief introduction about our guest. It's my privilege to call upon K.C. Shekhar sir, UGC Assistant Professor, Department of Physics, Central University of Tamil Nadu, Tiruvarur, to take over the session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your nice introduction and welcoming. First, let me thank Head of the Department, Radhika Madam, for giving this opportunity. And I also extended my thank to the administration of college. Okay, good afternoon, one and all. Okay, in this session, we are going to discuss about our lead-free relaxor ferroelectric materials are potential candidates for the energy storage applications. Okay, from 10th standard onwards, we discussed about the capacitor. So basically, what is the capacitor? Capacitor consists of two parallel plates and they are separated by a small distance. All right, let us say its cross-sectional area is A and the separation between the plates is D. Then what is the capacitance? The capacitance E is equal to epsilon naught A by D. Suppose if I introduced or filled the entire capacitor with the dielectric material, then what will be happen? Under the influence of electric field, these dielectric materials will be polarized so that charge accumulation will be more. Consequently, the capacitance of a capacitor is increased by epsilon r times. What is epsilon r? It is the dielectric constant or relative permittivity of a dielectric material. Okay. So now when the charges are accumulated on the capacitor, what does it mean? It stores the charge. Therefore, capacitors can be used for the energy storage applications. Okay, suppose if I applied a potential of del V, then let us assume charge Q is accumulated on the plates of a capacitor. Okay, so now what is the capacitance? The capacitance C is equal to charge by potential difference. Here the charge accumulation is Q and potential difference is delta V. So capacitance C I can written as charge by voltage or potential difference. So C is equal to Q by delta V. Now, if you want to bring a small charge delta Q from one place to another place, we need to do some work. Therefore, the amount of work done in bringing a small amount of charge delta Q from one place to another place can be represented as dW is equal to dq into delta V. dq is the charge which we are trying to bring from one place to another plate, and the potential difference between the plates is delta V. Therefore, the amount of work done dW is equal to dq by dq into delta V. And we know that delta V is equal to Q by C. From the relation C is equal to Q by delta V. By using that relation, we can written as dW is equal to dq by C into dq. Now, this is the amount of work done to bring a charge delta Q from one plate to another plate. Now, let us assume our capacitor is completely discharged. There is no charge on the plates. And you want to give a charge plus Q, capital Q on the plates. So now what we need to do? We need to calculate the total amount of work done during the charging process of a capacitor. That total work done, what we can do? We can do the integration between the limits. Here the initial charge is 0 and final charge is Q. Therefore, we need to integrate between the limits 0 to q, and dw is the small work. So dw, we know that q by c into dq. So here I can written as we are integrating with respect to dq. Therefore, the capacitance of a capacitor C is constant. You can keep outside. The integral of q dq is q square by 2. So the net quantity is q square by 2c, and you apply the limits 0 to q, we will get capital Q square by 2c. Okay, this is the amount of work done for the accumulation of capital Q charge on a capacitor plates. So the amount of work done is stored in the form of the potential energy. Therefore, we can written as the amount of work done is equal to the differential of potential energy. So we can written as, if U is the potential energy, the differential potential energy is UF minus UI. UI is the initial potential energy, UF is the final potential energy. But what we assumed, our capacitor is completely empty or completely discharged. Therefore, the initial potential energy UI is equal to 0. Therefore, the potential difference we can written as UF, let us say for simple purpose U. So I can written as the amount of work done, what we did here to store the charge capital Q, that is stored in the form of potential energy, and that potential energy we can be represented as U is equal to Q square by 2C. Right. So now we know the relation Q is equal to CV, and we can modify that equation in 3 different forms. That is, U is equal to Q square by 2C. If you put Q is equal to CV, I can written as half CV square. Otherwise, it is equal to QVT, QV by 2. Okay, this is the potential energy. Now we need to calculate how much amount of energy is stored in a capacitor and what type of devices are available to store the energy. Okay, apart from these capacitors, there are some other devices also which can store the energy. So basically we have 3 types of devices which can store the energy. Those are batteries, electrochemical capacitors, and dielectric capacitor, what we are going to discuss now. Suppose if you take a battery, okay, and its voltage is 12 volts and the parameters 100 ampere hour. These are the parameters for the battery. So by using these parameters, that battery can store how much energy? If you calculate it by using the formula I square T, you will get 4.3 into 10 power 6 joules. Okay. Suppose if you take a small dielectric capacitor and its capacitance is 100 microfarads and the applied potential is 12 volts. So if you calculate the energy stored in dielectric capacitor, so what we will get by using this previous formula, U is equal to CV square by 2. Use that equation and try to calculate. You will get 7.2 into 10 power minus 3 joules. Okay, battery can store megajoules, capacitor can store millijoules. If the batteries can store so much of energy, then why we need to think about the capacitors? Okay, battery can store 10 power 9 times higher as compared to that of the capacitors. If the batteries can store so much of energy, then why we need to think about the capacitors? Okay, so batteries, how the energy will be stored? They will be stored in the form of chemical reaction. Okay, when you take the capacitors, here the energy is stored physically. The charges will be simply sit on the capacitor plates. Otherwise, the dielectric polarization will be there when we have the dielectric material. Because of the dielectric polarization, you will get this positive charge and negative charges on the capacitor plates. Okay, physically charges will be sit on the capacitor. And when we release these charges, okay, these batteries will take very long time. Whereas capacitors can release the energy very fast in terms of microseconds and nanoseconds. Therefore, its power is very high. Suppose if you want to use for fast applications, okay, that is what we call as pulsed power technologies. Okay, for pulsed power technologies requires a material which can store the energy for a long period of time, but it needs to release the short period of time. For example, if you have in military guns are there, okay, if you want to release that bullet, you need to release the energy in very fast so that bullet can come out. It should not take hours, right? It should be in microseconds or nanoseconds. For example, if you put the power brake, okay, if you press the brake, that car should not be stopped after minutes. It should be stopped immediately. That means power should be released as soon as possible, as much as faster. There the capacitors has the advantage. Okay, since the energy is stored physically, and this is because of the orientation of the charges or the polarizations, so the energy can be released in very short period of the time, which is in the order of microseconds or nanoseconds. Okay, there the capacitors have much advantage as compared to the batteries. Batteries long term energy storage. Capacitors you can shortly store it and you can immediately release it in a small interval of the time. So therefore we have the pulsed power technology which is advancing now. So there we need the materials which can store the energy for a long period of the time, but it needs to release within a short period of the time. And its charging and discharging speeds are in the micro range, microseconds or nano range. So they are very faster. And one more thing, these capacitors can be operated at high voltages. Okay, you can apply 300 volts, 500 volts like that, even kilovolts also we can apply. So that is the another advantage. And they are more stable at a wide range of the temperatures, from room temperature to 250 degrees, 300, even more than that, they can have the thermal stability. All these advantages makes these dielectric capacitors are very unique. Okay, they have high power densities. Okay, so but their energy density is very small. So we need to improve the energy density to meet the practical requirements. That is the purpose. Okay, since they have power density, they have all these qualities. In principle, they have good for the applications. But however, their energy densities are small, which hinder its real practical applications. So people try to improve their energy storage capacities by using the different strategies. Okay, so that is what now I am going to discuss. So how many types of dielectric? Okay, so here we can have different methods, okay, to estimate the energy storage density. So basically we have the two methods. One is like static method and another one is dynamic method. In static method, definitely you might have done the experiment. Okay, charging and discharging of a capacitor in your laboratory. So there what you did, you took the capacitor and you have taken 5 volts or 10 volts battery and you connected to the capacitor and you noted the charging time, right? Then you calculate in how much time it will be charging. The same method here we are using. First we will take our dielectric capacitor that will be charged by using high voltage DC source. Once it is charged, what we will do, we will connect this capacitor to the external load resistance and you just measure what is the current passing through the capacitor during the discharging time. So if I is the current passing through the discharging time and RL is its external load resistance, then the amount of work done we can written as integral of I square R dt. So by using that expression, we can calculate what is the energy storage. But in order to make that is independent of parameters of the capacitors or size of the capacitor what we have used. So generally people will report that in terms of energy density. That means the amount of work done by volume of the capacitor. So we can written as energy density U is equal to W by AD. So just we know work done is, it is integral of 0Q V dQ and volume is AD. If you rewrite that expression, we will get 0 to E max D into DE. What is D? It is dielectric displacement. Okay, D is equal to epsilon naught into E. Okay, so that you can also correlate to the polarization. So that is one method, static method. So and another method which we have adapted here to estimate the energy storage of our capacitors is dynamic method. So here what we do, we will measure the polarization. Basically when we apply the electric field to a capacitors, okay, that dielectric medium is there, no, there the dipoles will orient and it causes the polarization. Because of that polarization only you will get plus Q and minus Q charges on the capacitor. So you can calculate the polarization. Once you know the polarization, how the varied with respect to the electric field, that is what you need to measure, the polarization versus electric field. So here we will get like a hysteresis process. One is charging and another one is discharging. Okay, the area between the hysteresis loop will give the energy loss density, and the area which we have shaded, that is what we called as the recoverable energy density. So here I can calculate during the charging, the energy stored U is equal to 0 into P max. That is the P maximum is the maximum polarization at the maximum electric field, P into dE. So during the discharging process, that is what we call as recoverable energy. So U recoverable is PR P max EdP. And energy storage efficiency, we can calculate eta is equal to U reversible by U reversible plus U loss into 100. Okay. So now if you observe this expression very carefully, so what we have here, the recoverable energy density is PR P max, integral of PR P max EdP. That is the limits, right? So here either we need to increase the electric field or we need to increase the dP. dP is the difference of polarization. That means PR, P max minus PR is the dP. So if you want to improve your recoverable energy, what you need to do? You need to improve the dP. What is dP? The difference of maximum polarization minus remnant polarization. Or you need to increase the electric field. Every material has some capacity to hold the electric field. More than that, it cannot withstand. Then the dielectric breakdown comes, and these dielectric materials will behave like a conductors or semiconductors. Okay, that is what we call as dielectric breakdown strength. So E is also have some limitation. You cannot extend much more. But compared to the other materials, these dielectric materials can have more dielectric breakdown strength or more E. Right, and we need to improve the difference of dP. That is the target, our target. Okay, so now if you look into different types of dielectric materials, right? So this you might have heard about in your MSc. So we can have the different types of dielectric materials. That the dielectric materials can be classified as linear dielectric materials, paraelectric dielectric materials, ferroelectric materials, and anti-ferroelectric materials. What is linear dielectric materials? In linear dielectric materials, there are no permanent dipoles. When you apply the electric field, okay, dipoles will be induced in the material, and as the field is increased, those dipoles induced and try to orient into the field direction. As a result, your polarization is linearly increased. Okay, here even if you applied the higher field, you cannot get the more polarization. So they have some disadvantage. And another classification of dielectric materials is paraelectric materials. What is paraelectric materials? These paraelectric materials have the permanent dipoles, okay, but they are randomly oriented at the room temperature. Therefore, the net polarization is 0 in the absence of electric field. So once we applied the electric field, they try to align or they try to orient to the field direction and contributes to the polarization. So as the electric field is increases, the polarization is increases up to some extent. After that, they will become try to saturate. Okay, these are the ferroelectric materials. Then what is ferroelectric materials? The ferroelectric materials have permanent dipoles, and we have some small regions where the dipoles are oriented in a single direction. That small regions we called as the domains. Okay, when we apply the electric field, what will happen? These domains try to orient into the field direction and try to become saturated. When you try to remove the electric field, they will not follow the same path. Okay, even in the absence of electric field, we have some remnant polarization. That polarization we called as the remnant polarization. If you want to make that remnant polarization to 0, you need to apply the electric field in opposite direction, where the remnant polarization will become 0. At that particular field, we can call it as the coercive field. And if you increase the electric field in negative direction further, these dipoles will be oriented into the negative direction, causes the minus P. Okay, like that we will have the plus P and minus P depending upon the applied electric field. If the suddenly current is switched off, even if you suddenly switched off your voltage, still there is a polarization, right? Even E is equal to 0, you can observe there are the polarization states. Positive you can call as the positive remnant polarization state, and negative called as the negative remnant polarization state. Okay, these are called as the conventional ferroelectrics. And another kind of category materials are there which we called as anti-ferroelectric materials. Here also we have the domains, but here what will be happen, we can have the two kind of polarizations. Okay, one is up and one is down. Okay, two orientations are there. These two orientations will cause the double hysteresis loop. Okay, among all these ferroelectric materials have the high polarizations and they can withstand high dielectric breakdown strength. Therefore, they may be attractive for the energy storage capacitor applications. Okay. However, as I told you previously, what is my requirement? I need to have large breakdown strength, that means large E, and the difference between delta P should be as much as high. Here, the conventional ferroelectrics have the nearly square shape hysteresis loop. That means PR and PS is almost the same. Otherwise, I can say the difference of P max and PR is very small. There, they are the disadvantage. Okay, we need to, from that expression, what we understand, to have the ion energy storage in a capacitor, we need to have large E as well as large delta P. Because of the squareness of hysteresis in ferroelectric materials, you have delta P is very small. So now I need to improve that delta P. Okay. So for that, what I can do, I can consider about another classification of materials, that is what we called as the relaxor materials. Okay, if you induce the relaxor nature in ferroelectric materials, they called as the relaxor ferroelectric material. What do you mean by relaxor ferroelectric material? Right, instead of the square hysteresis, we need to have the slim and slant hysteresis. You observed here, right? A and B we have shown in two figures. There we have the square hysteresis. Here we have the slant and slim hysteresis. When you have the slim hysteresis, your energy loss will be less, so that you have the more efficiency. And here we can increase the delta P, because PR is small, P max is high, so that we can improve the delta PR. So who causes the relaxor ferroelectric nature? So when you increase charge imbalance or different ions in a material, they will destroy long range ferroelectric order and they try to induce some small nano region ferroelectricity. Those regions we called as nanopolar regions or polar nano regions. That is what we represent the term PNR. Okay. In conventional ferroelectric materials, we have the macro domains. Okay. When you come to the relaxor ferroelectric materials, we have the polar nano regions. These polar nano regions will induce the relaxor nature in a conventional ferroelectric material. That you can create by controlling the grain size or by inducing the different types of ions or different types of atoms in the material, so that some charge imbalance will take place and they try to destroy the long range ferroelectric order. Okay, if you observe its transition temperatures, like you monitor its polarization versus with the temperature, and in normal ferroelectrics, what we can see, this polarization will be constant up to some temperature, and then there is a sharp decreasing or suddenly fall in polarization. That is what we called as the TC. Whereas if you take in relaxor ferroelectric materials, what we observe, this polarization will be gradually decreased. Okay, even after the TC also we have some small polarizations. Okay, that is because of the polar nano regions. Okay, but some small value is there, so that's why it have the diffused phase transition. Suppose if you take its dielectric versus temperature measurements, in ferroelectric materials we will have very sharp peak, whereas in relaxor ferroelectric materials we have the diffused peak. That means we will have the very broad peak. This very broad peak is caused by these polar nano regions. Okay, this is the basic difference between conventional ferroelectric materials and relaxer materials. Now you understand what we need. Okay, I need one ferroelectric material. After that, what I need? I need to improve its dielectric breakdown strength as well as delta P. That is the aim of our work. Okay, so that we can boost the energy storage capacity of a ferroelectric material. Once you understand that fundamental, what you need, that you can play with your materials. That is what we are going to do now. Okay, so what is the best example for the ferroelectric material? We know that BaTiO3 and lead zirconium titanate, okay, PZT, PbZrTiO3. PbZrTiO3 is very good material and it can be used in lot of materials. However, now we restricted that material because of these pollutions. Okay, lead is hazard material. Okay, by taken into the environmental safety, now European and American people ban the lead. Therefore, there is a urgent demand which can replace the PZT. Okay, when we look into different alternative materials, we observe that BaTiO3 can be some good candidates which can replace the lead zirconium material, but we need to modify something. Okay, that is what we are going to discuss now. So what is structure of BaTiO3? It is ferroscite and it is having AbO3 structure. Okay, so these barium atoms are occupied at the corners, oxygen atoms are occupied at the center of face centers. Okay, titanium atom is occupied at the body center. Due to the asymmetry in shape, you will not have the center of positive charge and center of negative charge at the same place. There is a displacement between the center of positive charge and center of negative charge. As a result, you will have the dipole. That dipole contributes to the polarization. That is how ferroelectricity exists in BaTiO3. Okay, so we will have different type of materials. Recently, this BaTiO3 is modified, okay, to improve its relaxer nature as well as to improve the dielectric materials, piezoelectric coefficients, and ferroelectric polarization to compete with the conventional lead zirconium titanate. Lead zirconium titanate is the right now people are using for the real practical applications. That should be replaced with a proper material. So in order to get the same properties, okay, people try to modify the BaTiO3 system. Okay, so now you need to understand one more point. Why PZT have the superior properties? Okay, because PZT can be exhibited in different type of structures like rhombohedral, tetragonal, cubic, like that. Okay, PZT has one good property. At the room temperature, it can have two structures simultaneously. That is what we called as the morphic phase boundary. That morphic phase boundary means coexistence of two structures in a single material. That will be depending upon the composition. Okay, so by keeping that point in mind, okay, Liu et al. In 2009 tried to modify this BTO and that he renamed as BZT, BZT. That people called as BZCT also. So when you look into this BZT, BCT, okay, now you carefully observe the diagram. So when we have BZT one side, that is 0, 100 is BCT. 10, 20, 30, 40 tells 10% BZT, 90% BCT, 20% BZT, 80% BCT, like that. So when we observe this diagram carefully, near the room temperature, within the composition of 40 to 50, okay, there is a composition around 40, 50, 60. At the room temperature, these materials have the two structures, okay, rhombohedral and tetragonal. So if you can tune the composition in such a way that if the material exhibits the two structures simultaneously, rhombohedral and tetragonal, that is what we call as morphic phase boundary, MPB. Okay, MPB is coexistence of two or more phases at a single time. So then those materials will show the rich properties. That properties existed in PZT. Liu et al. Tried to get the same kind of behavior in BZT and he tried to modify its composition and he observed that around 40 to 60 there is a rhombohedral and a tetragonal nature is there. Okay, so by using this diagram I try to improve, Okay, this relaxer behavior and consequently the energy storage properties of BZT system. This is the work which we done in our laboratory. Okay, composition dependent X BZT BCT bulk ceramics for higher energy storage application. This work we did here in Central University of Tamil Nadu. Okay, so here what is our idea? You understand from this introduction, right? I want to improve the relaxer behavior. Why I need to improve the relaxer behavior? I need to improve the E as well as delta P. That is my target. Okay, when I look into that diagram carefully, I know that if the composition is lies between 4 to 0.4 to 0.6, there is a probability of having the two phases simultaneously, rhombohedral and tetragonal. So now my idea is to bring those two phases in a single material by tuning the composition. Okay, that is what our idea, that is what we planned and executed. Okay, so in order to make these materials, what method we have adapted? We have adapted the solid state reaction method. What is solid state reaction method? You take their corresponding carbonates, corresponding raw materials. For example, in order to get Ba, I will use barium carbonate. In order to have the calcium, we will use calcium carbonate. For the zirconium, you can use zirconium oxide. For a titanium, you can use a titanium oxide. According to stoichiometric ratio, okay, I will explain simple. For example, if you want to make BaTiO3, what you need to do? You take BaCO3 plus TiO2. Okay, that is the chemical equation. When you mix those two materials and annealed or calcinated at high temperatures, chemical reaction takes place and you will get BaTiO3 plus CO2. That CO3 is there now, that will go like a carbon dioxide, CO2. Finally, you will get BaTiO3. Here I also use the same way. In titanium place, I doped zirconium. In barium place, I doped the calcium. Okay, that's why it looks like that composition is a little bit complex, but it is very simple. Simple BaTiO3 structure I have taken. Some of the barium atoms I replaced with the calcium atoms. Some of the titanium atoms we replaced with the zirconium atoms to induce that relaxer behavior in the BaTiO3 material. Okay, for that what we took? We took the corresponding raw materials, we mixed it properly and we used ball milling or grinding for 24 hours to get the uniform mixture. Those uniform mixture you will put in some crucible and you anneal at 1000 degrees for 2 hours. Then we will get that powder. You give that to the XRD and you confirm whether the material is formed or not. Once you know that that material is formed, you make a pellet by using the hydraulic press. We press it at 5 tons for 30 seconds. Then we will get some kind of discs. That is what we call as pellets. Those pellets again we given the heat treatment. That heat treatment we call as a sintering. That we have done at 1250 degrees for 3 hours. Okay. After that again you grind and you make pellet. Then again you give the second sintering. When you give the second sintering, basically you can improve the compactness, the density of your material. Okay, that is only the purpose. So once you anneal the second sintering, when you did the second sintering at 1250 degrees for 3 hours and you cool down to room temperature, then your pellets like ceramics, okay, even you cannot break that one. Okay, they are very hard. All right. So these pellets is used for our characterization purpose. Okay. I hope you understand how I made this bulk ceramics. Okay. So now, once our material is ready, what we need to do? We need to confirm, okay, we need to test whether our material is BGT, BZT or not. For that, what is the primary tool we need to use? XRD will tell us about the purity of your material and which phases exist. Okay. So we gave that our pellets and we done the XRD. Okay. So in XRD, what we will scan? We will scan the intensity versus 2 theta. Okay. So we made different compositions. X is equal to 0.4, 0.5, 0.6 because they are lies in morphotic phase boundary. Okay. And we have taken these dotted lines are there. No, those dotted lines are standard data. available in literature. That is what we call as JCPDS data, Joint Committee Powder Diffraction Standard data. Okay. So if you make any material, you can use this JCPDS data and you can verify whether your material is pure or not. Okay. So now you observe, we have shown dotted lines. Okay. At the dotted lines only I have the peaks. There are no extra peaks, right, other than the dotted lines, right? If you observe, whatever the XRD peaks or XRD reflections we observed in this material, okay, those reflections are exactly coincides with the JCPDS data, and there is no any extra peak we observed. That means what we can say that our material is pure phase. Okay, whatever the materials you doped, like barium, calcium we doped, zirconium we doped, we can say that barium is replaced with the calcium. Barium has gone, calcium entered. Okay, if you get any impurity phases, then you can say that those atoms are not entered into the lattice. Okay, if there is no impurity phase, we can conclude that whatever the atoms we are trying to dope, those are entered into the lattice positions. So that is the first observation we can get from the XRD. So from this XRD, I can conclude whatever the ceramics we made, they are having the pure perovskite phase. Okay. So now after that, what we need to do, whether these materials are having rhombohedral or tetragonal nature, that is what we are going to test. Okay. So for that, all the peaks are same, yet except at the 45 degrees and 60 degrees, 65 degrees. Okay. If at 45 degrees, if you have two peaks, then you can say that it is having tetragonal nature. Similarly, at 60 degrees, if you have the two peaks, we can say that it has the rhombohedral nature. So in order to check that one, if you expand that 2 theta around 45 degrees, here we can see that there is asymmetry in peak. Okay, that asymmetry, generally XRD peaks are very symmetric. Okay, if there is any asymmetry in the peak, it indicates that it has two peaks. Okay, when you expanded this one, here we can observe that there are two asymmetric peaks. Okay, that asymmetry is increased, or here we can observe clearly two peaks as the composition is increased. So in order to quantify that one, we are fitted with, we are deconvoluted the peak by using the Gaussian peaks, and here you can see. Okay, those green lines are two peaks. That discrete data, circles are there, no? Those are the experimental data, and that black line is fitted data. Okay, it is well fitted with our experimental data. Therefore, we can conclude that each peak contains two peaks. Okay, those are the two peaks which we have shown here. So since there are the two peaks at 45 degrees, we can say that at room temperature, because this XRD is recorded at the room temperature only, so that we can say that these materials are having the tetragonal phase. And similarly, if you expand it at 65 degrees or 66 degrees, here we can see two peaks. If there is no two peaks, then it is not rhombohedral. If two peaks are there, then we can say that rhombohedral. So from this XRD, what we have concluded, BCT and BZT, right, whatever the material we have synthesized, consists of two phases, that is rhombohedral and tetragonal at the room temperature. That means these materials having the morphotic phase boundary. In principle, they should show the rich properties because of the morphotic phase boundary. That is what we observed in XRD. Otherwise, that is what we can say. So now we did Raman measurements. Okay, Raman measurement is one of the important spectroscopic technique which can provide the bond informations. Okay, what type of bonds are available? Based on that bonds, for example, in these materials, you can have BAO bond, titanium and oxide bonds, like that. Different kind of bonds will be possible. So it will use the fingerprints regarding that bonds. Okay. So what we did here we studied these Raman measurements at different temperatures to know exactly what are the phases exist in these materials. Okay, that is what we have shown. These are for different compositions. X is equal to 0.4, X is equal to 0.5, X is equal to 0.6. Okay. So here we have shown the peaks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. This is what I have tabulated here. These 1, 2, 3 peaks which we have shown at different 149, 146, 149, 151 at different frequencies. Units are centimeter inverse. That is what we called as Raman shift here. So those peaks represents our material is having rhombohedral phase, and another peaks which we are having around 304, 525, 731. That is 4, 5, 6 peaks tells us the material is having the tetragonal phase. So Raman measurements also told us these materials have the tetragonal as well as rhombohedral phase. And when we studied at different temperatures and we try to estimate their intensities and intensity versus temperature, that is what we have recorded here. Here you observed, right? So these rhombohedral peaks, right, the intensity is 1 at room temperature. Okay, so when it comes to 50 degrees, that phase is disappear. That means rhombohedral phases exist up to 40 or 50 degrees. Okay, so similarly we have taken the tetragonal peaks, 5, 6 peaks are there. Now we monitor the intensity of fifth peak, and when we try to plot it, the intensity versus the temperature, here you observe around the 40 degree there is a peak, around 100 degrees, right, around 100 degrees up to 100 degrees, that intensity is sharply decreasing. After that it is saturated. So what we can conclude here, below 40 degrees these materials will have the tetragonal rhombohedral morphic phase is there. Okay, up to room temperature 40 degrees. After 40 degrees you have only tetragonal phase. After 100 degrees, that is what we call as ferroelectric phase transitions. Okay, tetragonal to cubic. Here we will not get perfect cubic, we will get the pseudo cubic. Okay, they behave like a cubic, but still they are not the perfect cubics. That phase we called as the pseudo cubic. So from Raman measurements, what we observed, our materials have the morphic phase boundary at room temperature, and it possesses two kind of phase transitions. One phase transition is rhombohedral to tetragonal at 40 degrees centigrade, and tetragonal to cubic or pseudo cubic at 100 degrees centigrade. This is what we observed in Raman measurements. Okay, and one more, that these bonds we can be replaced, right? What is the frequency of a oscillator? The bonds will be vibrated. It is like a simple harmonic oscillator. What is the frequency for simple harmonic oscillator? We can written as F is equal to square root of K by M. K is the spring constant. Here we can call as the bond constant, bond length, and M is the effective mass here. They are in simple harmonic motion. All right. So since they are depending upon the effective mass, F is equal to square root of K by M. That is the frequency for simple harmonic motion. These are all atoms. You read about diatomic molecule, right? So they will be vibrated about their mean positions like a simple harmonic oscillator. The same thing happened here also when they are interacted with the photons. When we applied the laser to the material, they interacted with the photons. They observed, they will undergo for the inelastic scattering. They can shift the frequencies either up or down. That is how Raman measurements are working. That's why we call as that is Raman shift. Okay. So here one beautiful result what we found here. So now I try to draw 1 by F square. F is equal to square root of K by M. No? So F square is equal to K by M. So that's why we have written 1 by F square is proportional to effective mass. Okay. So when you observe here, as the zirconium content is increasing, 1 by F square is decreasing. That frequency is shifted towards lower side. Okay. We have observed 304, 301, 300 as the composition is increases 0.4 to 0.6, and they exhibited the linear behavior. That means what does it tells us? Again, it tells us whatever the atoms we are trying to dope, they entered into the lattice positions. That's why we got the linear behavior 1 by f square. Formula f is equal to square root of k by m. No, 1 by f square is proportional to m. Okay, so theoretically it should be linear. Experimentally also we observe linear. That means whatever the elements we are doping in our material, they entered into the lattice system. So up to now what we observed, we made BCJT, BJT, and those materials are having the morphotic phase boundary at room temperature, and it exhibits the two transitions. One is from rhombohedral to tetragonal, and another phase transition is tetragonal to rhombohedral. This is what we, these measurements represents the SEM, okay, scanning electron microscopy measurements. So when you observe this SEM, so here what we observe, this grain size, all are compact. This grain size is decreased with increasing the composition. So when we increase x is equal to 0.6, zirconium will be more. This zirconium will causes the grain growth, hinders the grain growth. As a result, what will happen? We will get these small grains. These small grains will improve the relaxer behavior. That is what we can observe in the next few slides. So these are the dielectric measurements. So we measure the dielectric properties at different frequencies from 100 hertz to 1 megahertz. You observed in the beginning, right? So for the relaxer ferroelectric materials, these dielectric transitions, dielectric versus temperature graph should be very broad. If they are more broad, you can say that it is more relaxer. So here also we observe two anomalies in dielectric measurements. One is around 40 and another one is at 100. Right. So that means these materials exhibited the two properties. Ferroelectric to ferroelectric. That means ferroelectric rhombohedral to ferroelectric tetragonal, and ferroelectric tetragonal to paraelectric cubic. So that is what we observed here. And one more thing, this dielectric constant value is increasing at room temperature with increasing x is equal to 0.6. X is equal to 0.6. We observe the high dielectric constant. If the dielectric constant is more, you have the more polarization. D is equal to epsilon E. Okay. So if D is more, P is more. The polarization is more. In order to quantify how much relaxer behavior is there in the system, we used one equation. That law we called as modified Curie-Weiss law, and the expression is 1 by epsilon r minus 1 by epsilon m, which is equal to T minus Tm whole power gamma by C. Epsilon r is dielectric constant at a particular temperature. Epsilon m is maximum dielectric constant or dielectric constant at a Tc or a Tm. That is what we represent. So by using this expression, we modified the equation and we fitted for all these materials. And here you can see that gamma value. Gamma we got 1.60 for 0.4 composition, 1.66 for 0.5 composition, 1.70 is 0.6 composition. Okay, if it is purely conventional material, gamma value is 1. If it is ideal relaxer material, gamma is 2. If you have in between, they called as relaxer type materials. They exhibited the relaxer property as well as conventional ferroelectric properties. Okay. If gamma is equal to 1, it is pure conventional ferroelectric. If gamma value is equal to 2, it is ideal relaxer. We got the gamma values are 1.7, highest in x is equal to 0.6, which is closer to the relaxer nature. Ideal relaxer is 2. We got 1.7. So from here, what we can understand, by changing the composition in BaTiO3, right, we can induce the relaxer nature in the materials. That is what we got the evidence in dielectric materials. Okay. Then next what we did, this is what I explained. Gamma is more, and we observed the Tc, this dielectric constant value is higher at 0.6. So naturally, polarization value should be high. So after that, what we did, we measured this polarization electric field hysteresis measurements, okay, for different compositions, and also we done at different temperatures, right? So this diagram what we have shown, PS versus temperature. Here also you see PS slightly increases up to 40 degrees, then sharply decreases. After that it becomes saturation. Okay, linearly decreased and then it becomes saturation. So our ferroelectric polarization measurements, P hysteresis loops also supports. These materials have the two phases. One is tetragonal rhombohedral morphic base foundry, that is transferred to tetragonal. Tetragonal is transferred to the cubic. Similarly, EC also exhibits the same behavior. If you observe these polarization values, what we can say that X is equal to 0.6 having the better polarization. Then we estimated this energy storage property by using that expression. So U recoverable in the beginning we have shown integral PR to P max P into dE. This is your electric field. This is your polarization. You integrate and you get that values. So we estimated the energy storage by using the dynamic method. This is what we did. Okay, and we observed these energy recoverable energies and efficiencies are tabulated here. Okay, so we got 0.6 with the efficiency of 70 and WR is equal to 121 millijoules. So from these results we can conclude or we can say that this BZT at X is equal to 0.6 composition shows the better ferroelectric better dielectric properties as well as the energy storage properties. Okay, this work we published in this Ceramics International Journal. If you want, you can read here more. That is the full bibliographic information. Okay, volume number 45, page number 5808 to 5818. Year is 2019. Okay, can I stop or can I proceed a little bit more? Hello.
Participants, please respond.
Sir, you can proceed, sir.
Okay, I can discuss a little bit more. Okay, fine. If you have any doubts till now, you can raise.
Sure, sir.
Okay. So this is another paper, another work. This we have done in collaboration with Portugal. Okay. So here instead of bulk materials, we used the thin films. Okay. And we use two kind of materials. One is ferroelectric and another one is dielectric. Okay. So they are called as high K dielectric, different kind of materials. We try to combine those two materials to achieve the higher storage. Okay. So therefore the title is high performance ferroelectric dielectric multi-layered thin films for energy storage capacitors. So here what we did, we have taken PT coated silicon substrate. Okay, PT coated silicon substrate. On PT coated silicon substrate, we have deposited BCZT. That is what we have discussed till now, right? BCT, BZT. That bulk material we make in the form of thin film by using ion beam sputtering. It is one type of technique to make the thin films. Okay, so these films are deposited under the high vacuum. Okay, so that is the BCZT. After that, what we did, we try to deposit on the BCZT thin film another one more layer. That layer is dielectric layer. That here we have used HFO2 hafnium oxide, Al2O3 aluminum oxide. That I have represented here as HAO. HAO is HFO2 Al2O3. That is 50-50%. Okay, hafnium aluminum oxide. That is the material which we have taken as dielectric material. So here, what is our idea? So our ferroelectric properties are depending upon the orientations. Okay, so when we observe here, right, in bulk materials, here I have like a different kind of reflections are there. Okay, here 100, 110, 11, 211, like that, different kind of reflections are there. If I can able to grow the entire film only in one reflection, that is what we call as epitaxial films. Okay, they behave like a single crystal. But when it comes to the thin films, the terminology is epitaxial film. That means they are particularly oriented in a single orientations. Okay, if you can make your films oriented in a single direction, right, that will help to improve the ferroelectric properties. So that is the strategy which I am going to apply it here. So I have taken our PT. The PT is 1-1 oriented. Okay, that PT film is oriented in 1-1 direction. So when you have deposited those films, any films on PT coated substrates, okay, by adjusting their annealing and depositing conditions, we can try to modify those orientations. We try to get them here, that orientation in 1-1 direction. Okay, here basically this is the XRD, grazing incidence, X-ray diffraction, scattering. Okay, if you want to characterize the XRD for the pellets like bulk materials, you can use the normal XRD, so that these X-rays will be penetrated even up to the substrate. They will incident 90 degrees to the substrate, so that the whole X-rays can go to the substrate also. But when we use the grazing incidence, these what we can say that these X-rays will incident on the substrate with some angle. Okay, so that they can come out with the same angle, not penetrating deep into the substrate. If they penetrate deeply into the substrate, we will get only the substrate peaks. We will not get our films related peaks. Okay, that's why we need to do the XRD, especially when we do with the nanofilms. Here we have deposited 150 nanometer thickness only. So we used the XRD. This is the grazing incidence X-ray diffraction pattern. So when you observe this XRD peaks, here we have BCZT 101, BCZT 11 peaks are there. Here I try to calculate what is their intensities. Okay, when you observe from this table, I prime 11 by, these are the peaks related to BCZT. Okay, what we observed here, PT BCZT HAO having 0.81% of orientation of 1-1. That means it has high epitaxial nature, which is oriented in 1-1 direction. Okay, in principle they should have the better properties. Okay, so here what I did, this hafnium aluminum oxide, I have arc structure the device in different forms. Okay, first we have PT, then I have BCZT. Next what I did, after that I have coated hafnium. In next film what we did, that hafnium oxide we have coated on PT, then again we have coated BCZT. In third films we have coated BCZT, hafnium oxide, again BCZT. Like that we modified the arc structure of the device and we try to see the properties. Okay, so if you regard these ferroelectric properties, here you can observe that these ferroelectric properties are highly influenced by ferroelectric dielectric multilayer. The first green hysteresis loop is there, no, that is only BCZT. I have not used any dielectric layer or multi-layered film. We have not used anything. So in next cases, when we used HCAO, okay, at different positions, these hysteresis properties are modified. Okay, so from here what we can understand, I can improve the relaxer behavior. You can see they become more slant and slim. Okay, when we introduced the HCAO. Like that, we can play the relaxer behavior of BCZT by using the dielectric materials. Okay, so now how these ferroelectric properties are modified. Basically, when we have ferroelectric material and again when you coat it with the dielectric material, what will be happen? There is a charge accumulation at the interface. In ferroelectric material, you have always polarized property, right? Polarizations are there. That means what does mean? At one end you have negative charges and another one we have the positive charges. Let us say at top end you have the positive charge. When you coated another dielectric material, what will be happen? This positive charge will try to pull the electrons present in the dielectric material. Therefore, there is a charge accumulation at the interface, and those charge accumulations will modify these ferroelectric properties. Okay, these are the IV characteristics. For example, if you study normal IV characteristics, what should we get? We should not get any hysteresis. whatever the path you got from minus IV minus V2 plus V, and when we take plus V2 minus V, we will get the same path. But here we got big hysteresis. This hysteresis, that means this shows the resistive switching effect. Okay, that is one of the important area which I am working. That is what we call as resistive switching random access memories. Okay, for example, if you take normal resistor, it shows the ohmic nature, right? You increase the current, you increase the voltage, current linearly increased. When you decrease the voltage, current will be also decreased. You will get like a straight line. But here we introduced different paths by modifying their potential barriers. So even at a particular voltage, you have the two states. One is high resistance state and another one is low resistance states. Therefore, they can be used for the memory applications. That memories we called as resistive switching random access memories. That is the next generation of memories which people are using in laptops and computers. That is also one of the area which we are working here. So these IV characteristics supports that there is a charge coupling between ferroelectric and dielectric materials. Those charge coupling will modify the interface. That interface will modify our properties. Okay. Then here we studied the PE loops at the different high fields. Okay, then we calculated this energy storage properties, W recover and efficiency. Here you observe PT, HEAO, BC, ZT, AU. That is the capacitor. Capacitor means two metals. Inside one dielectric is there. Our dielectric is here, HEAO, BC, ZT. Okay, so HEAO, BC, ZT capacitors. Okay, here this red, that is BC, ZT, HEAO. Why it is showing very high? In the beginning, you observe that BC, ZT, HEAO having 1-1 orientation is more. If the films are oriented in 1-1, they will show the rich properties. So here we got the highest recoverable energy density when we put the hafnium oxide above the BCZT. Okay, so we got the efficiency up to 70%. So basically, when you want to apply for the real-time applications, we need to check how many times we can charge, how many times we can discharge. So when we repeatedly doing, right, so those capacitors will not work. For that also we need to test for the practical implementation. So we applied a number of cycles up to 10 power 8 cycles, and we measured the recoverable energy and efficiency. They are almost constant, so that we can use this for the practical applications. And we compared our work with the different materials. Here we are using this 160 nanometer thickness. The method is ion beam sputtering. Here we observed 71 efficiency and electric field is 750. Still we can improve by modifying some conditions. That is what we are doing right now. I hope these materials will also good for the Relaxor Ferroelectric materials and energy storage capacitor applications. Okay. So now this is the graph which we have taken from the Web of Science. Okay, by using the Relaxor Ferroelectric nature, ferroelectric materials, you see that blue, right? This data is represents the number of papers are published per a year. So in 2020, this trend is increasing. So that many people are trying to work, are trying to modify the conventional ferroelectric materials as a relaxer ferroelectric materials, and consequently to improve the energy storage properties. Okay. Thank you for your kind attention. If you have any doubts, you please.
Participants, please raise your questions. Any doubts?
No, any kind of doubt you can raise, the students. Okay. Silence is not acceptable.
For doubts, you can just unmute your mic, or otherwise you can put it in the chat box also.
Sir,
Yes.
hello, sir. சார் ஃபெரோஎலக்ட்ரிக் கெப்பாசிட்டர் மட்டும்தான் எப்பவுமே பெட்டரா சார்?
Can you speak in English?
Ferroelectric capacitor is better compared to all.
Ferroelectric capacitors has good characteristics which can become good for energy storage capacitors, but they have the square hysteresis, right? That delta P, PR, P max is nearly same. Okay, so that delta P is small. That means energy loss will be more. You need to decrease the or minimize the losses. That means delta P should be improved. Okay, otherwise they are good. To improve that property only we are trying to improve this relaxer nature. Basically they are ferroelectric properties, ferroelectric materials. We are trying to modify that squareness to the slimness.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. I have another doubt.
Ah.
In solar storage system, which one is best storage, sir? Battery or capacitor?
Basically batteries for the long term. Okay, they can store more energies, in that no doubt, but depending upon the applications, for military applications or in vehicles, motor vehicles or electrical vehicles, nowadays everything is power steering, power windows, like that people are telling. For example, if you want to close your door, okay, if you press your button, it should immediately close the window, right? Not after half an hour or not after 1 hour. There these capacitors have the advantage. There if you use the battery, for example, you press the button, after half an hour your window will be closed, your car window, but I want immediately to be closed, right? Braking also, brake system, when you push your leg, right, immediately power should be released so that it will assist the brake, right? Not after 10 minutes, after 5 minutes. If you use the batteries, they release the energy very slowly. Okay, if you use your dielectric ferroelectric capacitors, their charging and discharging timings are very, very high. 10 power 9 seconds or 10 power minus 6 seconds, in that range, so that they can immediately respond. Okay, depending upon applications, we can choose our materials or our devices like capacitors and batteries. Okay, for normal storage batteries can be used, but this particular pulsed power technologies, okay, if you want to in army weapons, if you want to shoot someone, right, after triggering, it should not go, right, it should go immediately, not after half an hour or 10 minutes. Okay, there we need these pulses with very fast. Okay, that's why that they called as, that as named as pulsed power technologies.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Sir, one more question is posted in the chat box about supercapacitors.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, can you read that question, ma'am?
Sir, she is asking that may I know about the supercapacitors, sir?
Okay. Basically, supercapacitors is also similar kind of capacitor where you can store the more energy. Okay, but their charging, discharging times and mechanisms are different. Okay, people are also working on these supercapacitors. You have that charge capacitance value is much higher, but there also you can store in terms of chemical, not physically exactly.
Any other queries or doubts? Participants, any other doubts? So shall we end up the session now, Sudarshana?
Yes, ma'am. Showing gratitude is one of the simplest yet most powerful things human can do for each other. May I now request Dr. V. Radhika, Convener and Head Department of Physics, P.K.R. Arts College for Women, Gopichettipalayam, to propose a vote of thanks.
Good evening to all. It has been our pleasure to host all the participants of the online conference at P.K.R. Arts College for Women. We have been fortunate to have some of the eminent persons from academia in the area of advanced functional materials and engineering. I'm sure that the participants must have benefited by attending this 2 days national conference. I'm very much thankful to the I'm very much thankful to the correspondent and secretary, Mr. P.N. Venkatachalam, and the Chief Executive Officer, Professor Jagada Lakshmanan, for giving us this opportunity to hold this 2 days national conference, and also for giving us continuous support, guidance, and motivation. My sincere thanks to Dr. D. Maithili, Principal of P.K.R. Arts College for Women, for her valuable suggestions and the logistic support. My heartfelt thanks to all the 4 speakers of this national conference: Dr. K. Srinivasan, Head, School of Physics, Bharatiya University, Coimbatore; Dr. Demappa, Professor of Physics and Research in Polymer Science, University of Mysore, Mandya; Dr. Sharat Chandra Virla from Godavari Institute of Engineering and Technology, Andhra Pradesh; and Dr. K. C. Shekhar, UGC Assistant Professor from Central University of Tamil Nadu, Tiruvarur. My profound thanks to all the participants who have assembled here from various geographical areas and making this happening a victorious one. Also, I would like to place on record my sincere thanks to the entire support team of our department who have worked hard behind the screens to make this 2 days event a truly successful one. My special appreciation to the ICT team of our department, Mrs. Arul Jodi, Assistant Professor of Physics, and Mrs. Priyadarshini, Assistant Professor of Physics of P.K.R. Arts College for Women, for helping the program to get live streamed in YouTube. Also, my heartfelt gratitude to all our students for extending their cooperation. Once again, I thank everybody for making this 2 days webinar a great successful one. Thank you all. Thank you. The feedback link is given in the chat box. Please fill it up within 15 minutes time, and the responses will be closed by 4 o'clock. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you. Sir, thank you so much for your very nice presentation, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.